And we've also, I would say today, wandered into a discussion about race, because, race is at the core of Trump's presidency. And so, we're talking that issue too today. Lee in Accokeek, Maryland. Am I saying that right, Lee?
Yeah, yes, right. Accokeek is correct. Thom, first I want to thank you for everything you've done, and you're a great host. I mean, I love listening to your show.
Thank you, Lee.
I'm a 55-year-old African American, and a couple of things. When you mentioned about we should suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, I always talk to my friends and say there should definitely be some sort of mental health services available to the African Americans in America because of what we go through. I mean, I had that talk with my mom when I first got my license at 16. And I told her at the time, I thought she was, that those were back in those days, and times were different. Man, I was 16, I had a car, and my first time driving my car, I got pulled over, and it was like a regular occurrence. And now, even as a 55-year-old man, I still feel some sort of stress between, driving the car, what can happen. Now things are being actually recorded when things have always been happening to African Americans, but we never really got the publicity and attention that is getting now because of everyone has cameras and
right.
is being across the world. Also, too, one thing, I take my daughter to school up in upstate New York and another one in Pennsylvania, man, and I go past one of the trashiest trailer parks in the world, and there's a huge sign that says "Trump, make America great again." And I just go to myself, I say, well, I mean, how can what the heck is going on in America when you're probably some of the poorest of the poor, but you're going to idolize somebody who could care less about you? I just don't understand, Thom.
Yeah. Well, Franklin Roosevelt said that poverty is the stuff that dictatorship is made of. And, it's absolutely the case. And I think that when we finally have a conversation about reparations, PTSD therapy or help or, as you said, mental health services. Well, Bernie's been arguing for years that mental health services should be part of, a national health care system. Should be free to everyone, but certainly to people who have experienced what's now, multi-generational abuse at the hands of a system. And, 400 years of multi-generational abuse and violence, absolute violence. So, yeah, I'm with you, Lee. Do you you want to add anything to that? We just got about 35, 40 seconds here.
Just even when I work, and
Yeah. Your phone is breaking up too, Lee. Lee, thanks a lot for the call. It's just crazy that as a nation we can't provide health care, we can't provide mental health services. It's crazy that as a nation we tolerate racist institutions or racism within our institutions. It's crazy that as a country we are not more awake to all this. And again, I think that between the Obama presidency and all the faux outrage over at Fox News about absolutely everything our first black president did, Nate made a point to me a little bit earlier, apropos some of our conversations on race, that I was saying PTSD, and P is post. And it's an ongoing trauma for people of color in this country. So probably a more accurate characterization would be TSD, traumatic stress disorder or syndrome or something like that. And I think you said it was Ward Churchill who first pointed that out. Thank you, Nate. Steve in Atlanta, speaking of which, says you wanted to talk about race. Steve, what's on your mind?
Man, I love you because you speak up for democracy. It's a wonder you haven't been killed, and I appreciate your courage.
Yeah.
Now, what I was going to say seriously is that Trump, when he said that he called those players just because they took a knee in protest because of injustices in the NFL, he called them a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Just let that resonate with you, America, calling somebody a son. And so we as black men took that, personally. You know, even just for that and that alone, one could not vote for him, and I cannot understand why a few of these black people are standing around as just showcasing with him. But I just think that was the worst thing from a lot of things from my perspective that he had done. Now, last thing, quite quickly, is that I was talking to a friend of mine, and by the way, we do talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome in our groups, and I can talk about slave racism all day. But I want. He calls himself. I'm a football player, and I know street life too, and academics. But the point is, he come across like he's so tough and all of this, but he's just really a weak, little weakling that one would want to just be in the ring with him for a minute because, you know, he don't. If you're not guilty, he don't want to. He don't want to answer no questions. Don't let nobody come and testify. I mean, all of those are just weakling. But I want to say pussy stuff, but you know what I mean. It's just really crazy, you know, for him.
Yeah, I'd rather we didn't use that.
He's not really. He's not as tough as he tried to be.
Yeah,
you know?
I get it, Steve, and I'd rather we didn't use that word on the air. I don't think we need to bleep it, but you know, it's just you know, please let's keep it family friendly here. But you know, I think you're right, and I think that a lot of Trump's bullying and blustering right now is coming out of a fundamental weakness and a fundamental insecurity. And every single time that the Republicans, like Mitch McConnell, say they don't want witnesses, the Democrats need to be saying, "What are you trying to hide? What are you trying to cover up?" Steve, thanks for the call, and you know, I like that PTS, you know, changing stress to slavery syndrome. Tony in Long Beach, California. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. I just wanted to respond to that brother that called earlier and said he just didn't understand and got talked about his daughter being in the military. First of all, brother, I would tell you, get her out. We have to admit as black people that this country has never been set up for us, and we gave 4 centuries of free labor, and we still getting shot by the police. And I thought that analogy the guy came up with earlier about the car running over people and the police stopping them. We know if a brother was driving, he could get shot dead right there in the seat. Yeah. Okay, so what black people and even a lot of white people, and you, Tom, give me hope in white folks, because I you know, I'm a 58-year-old black woman, and all I've seen and been through, you know, to keep from hating folks, you know, you have to really stay clear. But basically what all white people across the country has to understand, what true white supremacy is. And it's going to always work in favor of a white person coming out smelling like a rose. And what liberals, progressives, or whatever have to understand is your part also in allowing that to happen, because it all happens because it's allowed.
Yeah, I agree.
Bottom line.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And everybody, black folks have to understand what has been done to us, and we don't need to allow it anymore. Progressive white people that are trying to understand what's going on and do something about it is just that, do something about it. Yeah. Sitting back, like he said, in the car, you can stop the car. You can put him out of the driver's seat. Don't just keep sitting around everybody waiting on somebody else to do something. That's something black people got to stop doing, and white people too. It begins with you, just like what you said, you know, at the end of all of your shows. It starts with you. And until you and each one of us and all of us can look at ourselves and do what we're supposed to do, it's going to keep happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And to the issue of race, you know, white people need to start noticing, and particularly older white people who grew up in an era when their largest amount of contact with black people was through the media that portrayed black people in really, really negative ways, always the bad guys and always the fools, and that was right through the 90s, right? And you know, older white people who have those stereotypes, and they will pop up in your head, and you need to just say, oh, there's another one, and you know, get rid of that and go back to, we're all human beings here. We need to work on this together. We need to, and obviously, you know, that kind of reflexive racial response is not unique to just old white people, but all of us, I think, need to be constantly reaching inside ourselves, but empathetically into other people to try to experience their essential humanity, because that's what we're all just people.
But
here.
you know what, Tom? Yeah. We've had time to do that. People are not going to do that. What has to happen is there have to be consequences when you do the wrong behavior. Because let's face it, we all had the kumbaya moments and the saying and held hands and all of that or whatever. It hasn't changed.
Well, in a way.
In
a way, I mean, yeah, the Obama presidency was kind of the peak of that, and I thought I was very reassured by that. But the response has been the Trump presidency, and I think a large part of what brought Trump to power was white racists, people who are, not unconsciously racist or not even, consciously struggling with their own racism, but instead people who are fundamentally proud of being white racists, white supremacists, people who will, tell you these stories of how white people are the peak of the evolutionary pyramid or whatever kind of BS that they want to be peddling. And Susan Sarandon said back before the election she was going to vote for Jill Stein for the Green Party. And when she was told, well, that's a vote for Trump, she said, well, maybe if Trump gets in, it'll wake America up and we'll see how bad things really are. And in some ways, I think Susan Sarandon's prophecy has come true. And one piece of that awakening, I believe, is we're seeing all this racial tension just exploding into our streets with these white supremacist groups that are popping up all over the place and filling social media and everything. And sometimes you got to hit bottom before you start coming back up again. And I think that we're seeing that in our country right now, is that and it's yes, it's activating some of the white racists, and that's a terrible thing, and it's empowering them, and so we're seeing more murders and other things being done by white racists. But it's also, I believe, I hope, waking up, a whole broader spectrum of white people to the crisis of race in this country that the Obama presidency almost caused a lot of white people to say, oh, well, I guess racism is all over. We elected a black president. We don't have to worry anymore.
Right. And that's so not true, because you rendered him powerless. He did nothing.
Well, very little, yeah.
In terms of a lot of black folks are concerned, he couldn't. And he couldn't. The Democratic Party didn't support him either. So that's my point. It's like white America is having a black experience. You're starting to see your media lies to you. Your leadership lies to you. Democrats and Republicans are two sides basically of the same coin. Okay.
In some cases.
You know, and the bottom line, Trump can do what the hell he wants to do because he's a white man.